Hello, it's another Ask Guillem for sport. Let me start with something that is and it isn't football. It's the fact that it's Pride Month, week, depending on the country you look at. It's certainly 50 years since Pride started, and I think it's a good opportunity to say what I think of it. That for me, everything is allowed as long as there is respect and it's legal. And to me, that is the important thing, that there is respect. So I would like everybody to respect everybody's decision on how they want to live their life. But still, we are in 2020, and that doesn't always happen. An example of it is what happened in Villanueva de Algaidas, a village in Spain, in which the town hall decided to put a pride flag, a rainbow flag, and a couple of extreme right-wing politicians decided to force the town hall to take it off and use legal means for it, legal means that were actually designed for something else. But it was an opportunity to actually crush this celebration of diversity and inclusion. So as the town hall had to take it off, hundreds of other rainbow flags appear all over the village. Even older people that perhaps wouldn't have taken a step in that direction, they also were proudly supporting Pride and what the Pride flag stands for. So it's a daily fight against discrimination of all kinds, for race or sex, for so many things that origin, so many things that need to be still improved in our society. But I just from here want to just send that message. Just be respectful of people, and especially of those that go about their lives respectfully, asking to be respected yet again. Anyway, I thought I wanted to start there. I'm proud chairman of an inclusive club that opens the doors to everyone. And yes, I would like everybody to live the life that way, but I know we're not there yet, that the fight continues. That's the start, but there is plenty that we wanted to discuss. And to be honest, out of all the messages that you send me via Twitter, let me look for them. Most of them are about Barcelona. So as I talk about Barcelona, perhaps we should put the tweets of all of you that have been asking about it, from Francisco Castelo Branco, asking why the sexy football of Quique Setién doesn't work with these players at Barcelona. There is more. Pesco Trajovic is saying your thoughts on Barcelona after Messi and Suarez. A lot of money has spent on players who haven't worked out very well. Dembélé, Coutinho, Griezmann. Lord Lennon is asking in Catalan, talk to us about the future of Barcelona for next season. Ritesh Shirke says what the situation of Setién and are the dressing room rift stories about them fighting, or the differences between the players and the coaches. Is that true? Kwabim Idris says, what do you think about the Arthur Pjanic trade? And also reports today about Setién leaving at the end of the season. Jamesy says Barcelona needs a complete overhaul. Let me see, 3 about Madrid. We'll come back to that. 4 about Madrid, actually. What's Barcelona's plan? Mark's chef is asking. With an aging squad, they are selling a young player Arthur, and using the money to buy an older one. And Sean Moffat says, I also like this question. And one on Pochettino. Barcelona, where to start? I think Barcelona are taking decisions based on finances. That's the first thing. It's obvious to everybody. The Arthur Pjanic swap has got 2 layers. One, as we explained here, it's a way for the club to present the end of the season accounts, which happened at the end of June, with no deficit, with no red numbers. And that's because they needed to raise 70 million euros, and they done so. How? Well, they sold Arthur for 72 million euros plus 10. On bonuses and so on, which means that when you actually buy a player, you can put the cost or the money that's coming in straight into the accounts. When you buy a player, when you sell a player, the money that comes in goes straight into the accounts. So deficit erased. when you actually buy a player, like they bought with Pjanic, who's going to have a buy clause of 400 million, who's been bought, I think, for 4 seasons, even though he's 30. Remember, Arthur is 23, 24, and it's cost about 60 million euros. That can be spread out in the years of his contract, in the 4 years of his contract. So that makes the accounts look good. Why do Barcelona need to make the accounts look good? Because if there is a deficit, if there are red numbers, it has to be paid. Very noisy birds there. It has to be paid by the board itself. They are responsible for any debts of the club. That's in short how the story is. So by erasing the debts, then obviously they won't be able to pay any extras or any debt. But of course, that affects the quality of the squad. Now let's go into in depth into why Arthur has been the chosen one. They tried to sell Semedo, they tried to sell Umtiti, Rakitic. They did not go. Arthur said at the beginning, "I'm not leaving," and he officially said that to both clubs. But eventually, the wages have been raised by Juventus. That's been important. The fact that he's been pushed out is also important. But also, sometimes the fact that it wasn't working for him, that doubts have been grown, that what he looked really good in certain games against Spurs, for instance, in London, he had a really good performance there, but that was not continued. There was no, he didn't add fluidity to the game of Barcelona, didn't get to do those passes that you demand from the midfielders of Barcelona that beat lines of defense. He didn't do that enough, didn't get into the box enough, didn't score enough, simply not enough from him. Yes, he's 23, 24, so there was a room for improvement, but the urgencies of Barcelona have meant that he could go. He had good relationships with the players. I don't think they will cry his departure, but of course, the first reaction from everybody is, you're getting rid of somebody who's in the Brazilian national side for somebody who's 30, really? Well, finances takes prominence here. There is a big division between what people in the changing rooms, the players in the changing rooms are thinking and what the board are thinking. And the differences are getting wider and wider and bigger and bigger. And that has been, for instance, seen at the fact that I asked recently Frankie de Jong in an interview that's in the YouTube channel, and it will soon be a podcast in the Pure Football podcast. I asked him if how the conversations with the board were going in terms of, the board wants the players to reduce their wages. Basically, the players said no to that. But certainly, the board needs the players to reduce their wages. So how they'll do that, we don't know. But one thing that all unanimous on is the lack of confidence of the board and the players on the coaching staff. That's very obvious. Interestingly enough, reports from people that had both Quique Setién and his number 2, Eder Sarabi, and other clubs were not the most positive. Those were the reports that got to Barcelona. But the chairman decided to go for Quique Setién, especially when he got the no from Xavi, he got the no from Pochettino, and he got the no from Koeman. And decided to go for Quique Setién because some people within the squad thought he could be a manager that will help us with the style, to improve the style. What has he done since he arrived? I think there hasn't been much time to training, but you can compare the 2 weeks that Barcelona dedicated before the league restarted, training as a group. What they did there with, for instance, what Celta of Oscar Garcia did. And Celta has changed completely. They're doing so much more that they weren't doing. Barcelona, not so much. They certainly have improved on the pressure high, better than Valverde's time perhaps. They build from the back with 2 or 3 new alternatives, but that's about it. They're getting worse results away. Interesting that when Luis Suarez was asked about results away, and why is it that they got only 23 out of 48 this season points away, he said, well, that's for the coaches to sort out. Tasca, as we say in Spanish. Little bit of a dig there to the coach. You all have seen, I imagine, the pictures of in one of the cooling breaks against Celta. The cameras followed Barcelona, and you could see that there was a group of people that included Luis Suarez and Messi, and Eder Sarabia, number 2, came to that group, and Messi turned around and went away. Came back to drop the bottle, but again, when Eder Sarabia approached him, Messi went away. That's what we're seeing, and when it's so obvious, means that there is also Alba did something similar recently, and so did Rakitic on that game of Celta. He was talking to very dismissively, reacted very dismissively to some words that he was getting from Eder Sarabia, the number 2. We can only analyze what we see, and we can only analyze from what we're hearing. And it seems like there is a lack of confidence with the coaching staff. So much so, that the impression everybody's got is that if the league gets lost, maybe somebody else will coach Barcelona in the Champions League. We'll have to see. Decision has not been taken about this season. I think they're close to taking one about next season, and I do believe that Quique Setién will not be there next season. So that means that just before the elections in 2021, they'll need to get a manager for a year, unless they convince Xavi to start imposing his ideas, and then, in a way, the elections will still have to take part, but I'm sure everybody will accept that Xavi can continue in charge. We will see. All that has to be seen yet, but it's not a positive atmosphere in the camp. There are doubts about what both Quique Setién and Eder Sarabia are doing. I would like to hear more from both of them in terms of what work they're doing, and I will ask in press conferences to see if they can come up with more explanations. But this is what we're getting. Now the finances are so difficult at Barcelona, determine everything, that I cannot see how the future could look bright for Barcelona. On one hand, they had to renew Messi, and I don't think they can do it reducing his wages, but they'll try, as they will try to reduce everybody else's wages. There is a lack of energy within the side, unless you put a manager that believes in 2 players that do bring a lot of energy and new things in Ansu Fati and Riqui Puig. We analysed in detail in La Liga TV what Riqui Puig does. We'll probably do so as well again on Ansu Fati, because they add, yes, energy, in the case of Ansu Fati, depth, so he runs in behind, he makes good runs, likes to go 1v1. Not many players that can do that. Riqui Puig, on the other hand, is that kind of midfielder that wants the ball, gets between the lines often, wants the ball, and then just delivers passes, vertical passes in front of him to actually beat lines of defense, or making runs if the space is in behind the midfielder, making runs. He can do that to actually get into that space, have more time to take a decision. A lot of really good things, positive things that they both done, but they've been used too late. I think we may see more of them too, and that will be a good thing for Barcelona, especially as Frenkie de Jong is injured. Disappointing Griezmann, we spoke about it. He doesn't know what to do anymore. He doesn't know what to do. The things that he's asked to do, he does, but it doesn't make him better, doesn't make the team better. Like to be a number 9 in the last line of defense, or between the centre back and the full back, just where Luis Suarez is as well. But Luis Suarez tends to be seen more often. When he goes wide, he doesn't have the pace to actually beat defenders 1v1. There is all that's working against Griezmann, and I think he's down. He doesn't feel confident. He's lost his confidence, and he cannot help the team that way. Perhaps he doesn't feel the synergy that's necessary from other players. Who is to blame? He said he was coming, and then he wasn't, and then when he came, the players wanted somebody else. So there is all that, and what happens with a team that has won a lot is that they probably think that they know better than anybody else what they need. They may do, but they also have to accept that the role of the coach is one to help them, and the role of other players is to make them better as well. Well, it doesn't seem to have that kind of connection, and the results are there to be seen. Against Sevilla, draw, against Celta, draw, and then of course Real Madrid have taken advantage of the 2 points ahead. Now let's talk a little bit about Real Madrid. because Tommy Franch is asking, will Real Madrid include a buyback option on Ashraf Hakimi if they sell him to Inter? No, because if they sell him for 40 million, if Inter's willing to pay 40 million, in today's market, that's a great sale, and Inter won't want that. Odriozola is the other right back that Real Madrid have, of course, who's on loan in Germany. But Carvajal has got still a few years ahead. So it's a shame because, in a way, because Real Madrid have got these youngsters that could have just given them another 10 years of life to the team. But to be honest, they need the money like everybody else. Hakimi has done so well as a right back, as a left back as well, but he knows that coming back to Real Madrid means not playing, so he's willing to go. Ben Isaac is saying, how does Zidane keep getting Real Madrid to win every season in charge? There's a bit of mystery, like there is in football. There is also an understanding of the squad, and there is also a very good squad. There's all that. Most of the wins have come in the Champions League. The priority this season was the league, and at some point there were doubts about the future of Zidane, but quite clearly he's involved everybody. That's the first thing to say. He's made Real Madrid a simple game where quality is the most important thing. They don't go into the pitch with a lot of instructions. That means sometimes when they play defenses that are very compact, and as you saw against City, for instance, they're unable to beat well-oiled teams, but they have a lot of quality, and especially Benzema, who's in outstanding form. For me, one of the top 5, top 6 players in the world. And yes, the other ones would be Mane. I know you're talking about Salah. I'm just going to put Mane there. Salah would be my 7th, if you like. Kevin De Bruyne, for certain. Lewandowski, oh yes. Van Dijk, Messi. Those would be, alongside Benzema, my top 6. And if you put Salah, that'd be my top 7. Sammy saying, who should be Madrid's player of the season? Varane, Benzema or Casemiro? Good choices. Varane has been outstanding. So has Sergio Ramos. Casemiro, absolutely necessary. I just think that the Benzema, that is, when you choose this kind of thing, player of the season, you have to talk about the most influential player, and Benzema has been influential, but also the way he does things should count. This is a spectacle, isn't it? It's a show, and as such, he does give us such moments of clarity and imagination, like that, the back heel that went through the legs of the defender of Espanyol. Was it Bernardo? And with knowing that Casemiro was coming and for the goal that beat Espanyol. Blair Campbell says, with Hazard and Jovic not meeting expectations, will we see a busy summer from Real Madrid? You won't see a busy summer from anybody. Jovic, if anybody wants him, he's for sale. Hazard will have to improve. But they have players that they have to decide what to do with. Ceballos is one of them. Hakim, we spoke about. And of course, Odegaard. The impression Real Sociedad have got is that Odegaard may stay at Real Sociedad, which is good news. He has told the club that he wants to stay at Real Sociedad, still in the hands of Real Madrid what to do next. I think the drop of form kind of works in the favour of Odegaard, because Modric still in good form. You can count on Kroos as well. Casemiro. They still got midfielders, Valverde. You still got good midfielders at Real Madrid, so perhaps Odegaard will stay another year at Real Sociedad. Last one from Paulo Saferreira. Benfica supposedly is trying to hire Pochettino. A few weeks ago, it was Newcastle time. What can you tell us about his current situation? Well, I think he's waiting. As he always says, he listens to whoever comes with a good offer, and not so much money-wise, but an interesting proposal, an interesting project. Obviously, still is, for the new owners of Newcastle, the number 1 target, but I'm sure they'll have to answer a lot of questions before he takes any step that direction. I think Benfica, top club, historical club, but you need to do a lot of things with that club, from my understanding. There's a lot of work to be put to actually make them, put them at the level that they were, especially in Europe. And perhaps it would be a good proposal if there was nothing else on the table. There won't be much movement in terms of the big benches. And I still got in my head that when Pep Guardiola goes, if it's just one more year, Pochettino will be a great replacement. And I know that Chiqui Begiristain is a fan. But can he hold on for a whole season not coaching? We'll have to see. there is no clues, as he's given none on what his future is, but those things he's very aware of. The possibilities that there are in front of him. That's it for Ask Guillem this week. Thank you very much for your questions, and remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel and check on the podcast as well. Go on Twitter and Pure Football Pod, and you'll get all the instructions on how to get the Pure Football Podcast. And this is a bonus track. I forgot to tell you something, which was that I put out on Twitter an article I did on Arteta when he first was announced as a manager of Arsenal. And I spoke to Cazorla about this, and he said he wouldn't mind at some point. It'll be good to just spend time with Arteta on the bench. And of course, that's got the Arsenal fans very excited. I can tell you that there's been no offer at the moment, as of today, for Cazorla to join as a player. No offer. But I do know that Arteta will ask Cazorla to be as a member of the coaching staff at some point in the future, because they aim to understand football the same way. They love working with each other, and but there's so much that Arteta has to do to get things right at Arsenal, not just in terms of the football practice, but I think throughout the club it seems to be needed. That's all that's coming out from there. A lot of work to make sure that everybody understands the role, for everybody to do the role the best they can, and for Arsenal to go back where it belongs. But all that work will be put in. Everybody will put the hours for that work to take place, and at some point, as I reckon, that may happen. Cazorla becoming a coach at Arsenal or with Mikel Arteta. I think it will happen. We will see when, because Cazorla has decided his future already. Has told no one about it, not the club, nobody. And the club will be the first one to know what he wants to do next. And we've got not a clue if he's going to retire, if he's going to move to another country or another team. We don't know anything yet. But the only thing I can tell you is that Arsenal has not made an offer for him as a player. And yes, that Arteta and Cazorla at some point will be on the same bench. That's what I believe. Okay, that's it.